2025. This is the Teaching and Learning Committee meeting. Can you verify that the meeting has been properly posted?
Yes.
Okay, moving into our second item for general business is the approval of the Teaching and Learning meeting minutes from the November 4th, 2025 meeting.
I would move to approve the minutes for November 4th.
Second.
Okay, been moved by Mr. Zenobia, second by Ms. Koenig. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say no. Passes 4-0. We are now at the portion of our meeting where there is an opportunity for public comment. Do we have any speakers?
No.
Okay. There is no new content areas for tonight, so we'll be going into our other teaching and learning business. The first item for discussion tonight is South's continuous improvement data story.
Well, I'll introduce the topic and our presenters tonight. So Jamie Heinzel is here with us with Maria D'Amato Cucci. And tonight we have two topics that we're going to talk about. Both are related, and so they'll blend into each other. But first is South's continuous improvement data story. As you see here, the graphic is the one that we use for all of our strategic planning. Previously, we had shared last year just our process for strategic planning and how our district initiatives as far as our district strategic actions are aligned with our mission as well as our key performance indicators. And from there, what happens is that we align our work with the schools. And last year, Mr. Bennett came from Les Paul to share a little example of what it looks like at Les Paul. And so each year, we want to bring a principal forward and just highlight what it looks like. South is unique in their journey since they have 3 schools within one. It makes the data a little bit more difficult, but we're working on that. I've told Maria that we're working on that. But they also are identified as a school that needs support in certain areas, and they'll talk a little bit more. But new this year, Jamie has been partnering with them, and we want to, not that that's new, but we want to highlight the work that they've been doing, really having a strong process around continuous improvement in data at that school level that has led to some of the results that we can really celebrate for South. And then after this, as part of the South presentation, she'll share a little bit of information about the school report card, and then Jamie's going to get into an overall summary of the school report card as a district. Again, though, there's always changes that we'll share with you, but we'll share with you the results and everything with that with the second presentation. But they're very much linked together, and these two have been working really hard together, and so it's a lot of good work together and celebrations to have.
Thank you for having me here today. So we're going to start off just with what we mean when we say all means all at South High School. At South, our mission has not changed for many, many years. I've been at South, this is year 10, formerly started in the assistant principal role and now have taken over the past 4 years, I believe, in the principal role. So our mission is learning, growing, succeeding, every person, every day, and we truly look to live out this mission. So this is all people, both students as well as our staff. In terms of the student aspect of it, students are expected to learn and grow at the grade level and higher. Our guaranteed and viable curriculum definitely supports that work. This is something, we have students that come in with some gaps that we're looking to fill, and so we are continuously looking at ways to provide them with that grade level and higher curriculum so that we can improve those gaps quicker than one-to-one, right? We want to improve those as quickly as we possibly can. For staff, we talk about being reflective practitioners, being lifelong learners, and that's really what we do when we live out our mission. We talk about collective efficacy, that idea of shared beliefs amongst staff that positively impact student outcomes. And as we know, Hattie's research shows that collective efficacy has one of the highest impacts on student achievement, and we're seeing that growth at South High School, and we're really, really proud of that. So what we'll show with you today is you'll see the impact of all of this work of us living out our mission at South throughout this presentation.
All right, so just to explain the process that we use to do all this work is, so South and the team engaged in what's called the data protocol process. So the goal of that process was to identify all students and determine if they were meeting grade level expectations or higher. So as Jen mentioned, we knew that there were some areas that we needed to look into more specifically. So as part of that process, what we did is we really dug into the data and we really looked to see what particular skill gaps might exist within groups of students and decided to put in some actionable steps based on the data that we saw. So we're going to talk through that data protocol process throughout this presentation by looking at our student achievement data. So like Jen mentioned, we're going to look at our achievement specifically on the report card. We'll also look at some of our growth data, both of which are very good. They show some improvements as well over the work that has been done. And then we'll also talk about what are those specific actionable steps based on the data that we noticed, and how are we monitoring progress? So how do we know when we have met our goal?
So as Jamie just mentioned, we started by examining our data. This is at South as well as the Engineering and Health Academy. So right now, you see this is South School Report Card. We examined our achievement data as well as our growth data, and we're going to talk about both of those. Post-COVID, we are seeing consistent improvements in our DPI report card, something we're really proud of, and we continuously, again, go back to our mission of learning and growing from our past practices. As our team pulled apart this data, we disaggregated it by all student groups: students with disabilities, students without disabilities, English learners, economically disadvantaged, race, so on and so forth. We were looking for both celebrations as well as areas of improvement in both the areas of ELA and in math, again, with regard to achievement. This school year, South has earned its highest school report card thus far, which we're really proud of, and we believe much of the work that we've been doing is a result of this work. Additionally, we examined, as we talked about, our health and engineering academies, and just as Jen had mentioned, South is unique in that we have 3 schools within a school, and so they're reported separately. You'll see here that our health academy and our engineering academy school report cards, health academy continues to exceed expectations, and our engineering academy school report card significantly exceeds expectations. Year over year, we see really positive results in both of those academies.
Maria, maybe you're going to get to this, but if not, can you speak to how all the kids
Yes.
are in the same building? I think
Yes.
sometimes we forget that they're in the same building and they're taking classes right down the hall, and some of the engineering prep students are taking a class in South. And so while there's a different report card, the kids intermingle.
Correct. So all students are students of South. Engineering Academy students have 2 courses per school year that are in the Engineering Academy. Their math, their science, their social studies, their English, all of that is within South. All of the elective opportunities are available to students, and the same is true vice versa, right? South students have access to Engineering Academy courses as well as Health Academy courses. So we have partial enrollments. Those are not accounted for in our school report card. Those are accounted for in South School Report Card, and then we have the full enrollments, which are accounted for in the school report card. So yes, just as Jen said, all students are students of South taking courses within South. The academy courses, they just have 2 credits per year in the academies. So just as we talked about, we also examined our growth data. And I'm sure you've seen this before. It takes sometimes, I don't always know what I'm looking at, so I just wanted to share with you. Growth is a major part of what we can control, right? We can't control necessarily what students come in with, but we can control how much they grow when they're with us. And so that's that idea of own the data like own the data like you've caused it, is really a philosophy that we like to live by at South High School, again, a part of our mission. So you'll notice the blue boxes show student groups that are making at or above growth, like they're at growth or above growth. There's a way of saying that that is not the right way, but that is what that means.
Average growth or above.
Thank you.
I got you,
Average
Maria.
growth or above, yes. And then those that are in the white boxes are students that are not making average growth. So we definitely examined student groups who made the above average growth as well as the groups that were below average growth. And then in ELA, we noticed that our Hispanic and Latino population made just below average growth, as well as our English learners and special education students were making below average growth. In math, we noticed that all of our subgroups made above average growth except for our English learners. So those were areas that we dug into to try and figure out why are they not making this growth and what action steps are we going to take so that they will make that growth. So based on that, we created an action plan around the student groups that were making this below average growth, and we really tried to find impactful ways that we are going to close the gap so that in the future they will make above average growth.
So one thing I will add, and I'll talk more about this growth measure when I go over the school report cards for our district as well. So the vertical line represents the average growth, which is a 3.0, so that's typical growth. The scale is from 0 to 6. Anything further to the right of the vertical line really indicates the impact of instruction and leadership practices. So you can see, like Maria mentioned, those groups that are really making average to above average growth. Those are highlighted in blue, and the further to the right of the line would indicate those further instructional practices and impacts of leadership.
We also looked at our engineering and health academy students and just the types of growth that they're making. Definitely celebrating that all of our subgroups in the health academy and all of our subgroups in the engineering academy are making that above average growth. So then we just talked about this, what sort of action steps are we going to put in place so that we can start closing these gaps with students that might come in below grade level. And we definitely work to build teacher and staff teams. So that includes our school leadership team, who really is digging into this data and determining action steps. Those are our professional learning communities that we have throughout the school year, where course alikes are meeting with their co-teachers, because we know special education is an area of focus. So they're co-planning together, they're looking at assessments together, they're analyzing student assessments together, and really talking about ways to try and close gaps. We also are working with our student services team to determine, in terms of behavior, attendance, and academics, how are we going to close gaps for students that might come in below our grade level. We also have our differentiated professional development. So if you are a co-teacher at South High School, then you are in a co-teacher strand of professional development, and you're receiving a lot of high leverage practices all around co-teaching. If you are not a co-teacher at South, then you are in a different strand, which really focuses on independent learning, small group instruction, and how are we closing gaps of students. Like we have our Tier 1 level, where all students have access to our guaranteed and viable curriculum. But if students aren't understanding at that Tier 1 level, what are we doing now to support them at the Tier 2 and Tier 3 levels? In addition to that, teachers are receiving coaching and feedback around our strategic action goals. That happens through both our instructional coach as well as just our educator effectiveness cycles. We are coaching throughout those. And then we're also utilizing walkthrough data to monitor our professional development and determine what next steps we need to make. So that's on the teacher side of it. On the student side of it, again, we've established this multi-level system of support and defined what does it mean to be Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 based on our current data. And this is around behavior, this is around academics and attendance. We're consistently monitoring this data. We have a South Data Wall spreadsheet. Staff have their own spreadsheets from there that they've created where they're monitoring their students' data. And then we're monitoring the tiered criteria, as we talked about before. We have intentional scheduling for students that are not at grade level or higher, specifically to special education students. What are their needs? What are their goals within their IEPs? How are we supporting those goals within IEPs? And then we've created a school-wide SLO, which we've had for many years, but this goal is really to support students that are below benchmark on our ACT and pre-ACT. And just talking through how that impacts both at the individual level, and that's with teachers in their classroom, as well as at the PLC level, their course alikes with their co-teachers, and then at the school-wide level as well. So this data analysis led us to develop a strategic action plan with action steps that really address those specific student groups that we just have talked about that are not making above average growth or average growth. We're continuing to monitor student and staff success with a goal of increasing the percentage of students that are considered meeting and advanced in both achievement and in growth on ACT and pre-ACT. And the way in which we're doing that, again, is through the school-wide SLO that focuses on students who scored below benchmark on both pre-ACT and ACT. And that test starts right away in 9th grade. It's like, I want to say, 5-6 weeks into the 9th grade school year that they're taking the pre-ACT. So we're able to see growth over time. Teachers and PLCs are monitoring their progress through formative and summative assessments. As I talked about before, they're analyzing their student assessments and their student work, and they're talking about different strategies that they're using in their classroom to try and close that gap, specifically to the Tier 2 level and Tier 3 levels. And then we also have our learning walks that ensure the fidelity to our grade level curriculum, and those high leverage instructional practices that we're really trying. Co-teaching is one of them that focuses on one of our groups.
I'm going to just jump in there. A lot of teacher jargon that we spit out in education, and so SLO comes off our tongue, like we all know what we're talking about, the same things, but that is really a student learning objective, and so as part of the educator effectiveness process, each teacher is required to do that, and then we pair that in with all of our strategic planning, like Maria is saying, we start with a school SLO, and then the teachers pair down to that.
Yes, thank you. So some next steps of what we're going to continue doing to see the progress that we've seen thus far. We're creating additional strategic actions, again, to accelerate our skills of our students that are in need of additional supports. Students with IEPs, our English learners, as well as our Hispanic Latino population. We want to talk a lot about like balanced assessments and what's the purpose of taking an assessment and what opportunities do these assessments create for students, because sometimes even just educating them on the purpose of it maybe makes them take them a little bit more seriously. We are continuing to try and find ways to also strategically incentivize growth on ACT and pre-ACT and give them kind of a stake in the game. So we're trying to find creative ways of doing that as well. Our professional development really is centered around our Tier 1 instructional practices. That really is rigor through AVID, our WIC core strategies of writing, inquiry, collaboration, organization, and reading, as well as gradual release of responsibility. And then our Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports. That's both with our homeroom time and intentionally pulling students that need that additional support, as well as the student services team looking at ways to try and close gaps. So one example at the Tier 3 level, we have our school psychologist right now who's working with, I guess it would really be Tier 2 because it is a group of students. It's our English language learner students that really are struggling. They have 1 or 2 Fs in classes that are paired up with our English language learner students that are finding success. And they're really focused on math right now because math is an area that they really struggle with. So we're trying to find ways to strategically close these gaps that we're finding when we are digging into our data. Special education has been a topic of conversation. We're also looking at writing IEP goals that really match that student data, having co-teaching as that high leverage instructional practice, and what does that look like, and how do you co-plan with a co-teacher, because we know it doesn't happen by accident. It has to be intentional. It has to be purposeful. The use of teacher leaders in our building, we are really trying to develop model classrooms so that people can go and observe what this looks like in a science, in a math, and whatever classrooms that we have that are really showing some major progressive instructional practices. And then strategically scheduling our special education continuum of supports, really making sure that our students with IEPs have the best possible schedule that's going to set them up for success, because we know they are our highest need and the biggest area that we have to improve upon. So I guess to conclude, and I'm happy to answer questions, but our growth at South definitely shows a system that learns, adapts, and improves over time, just like our mission of learning, growing, succeeding, every person, every day. Our collective efforts have definitely resulted in our strongest DPI school report card to date, and we're really excited just to continue building on this momentum that we've already started. Thank you.
Great, what questions do we have? I will start. So just kind of looking at the data, and I know this is, I love to see the progress and the details of how we're doing. In fact, when we initially talked about how the schools were meeting at the high level and then breaking it down into having goals so that we know how to meet the needs of our students, which changes every year, right? I mean, this is, the challenge about that is that there isn't a set stone that we start this year and then it'll change again for what our plans are next year. And I get pretty excited to see the amount of work and emphasis that goes into trying to identify where we're succeeding and where we're not, and then how do we move around to get the services around that we need. But the question that I do have is on, and taking a look at the growth, and this is more of a data question. I'm sure we'll talk more about this in the DPI report cards, but this is, the report card and the data is effectively broken. So you're trying to grow and match pieces and points together. So when you take a look at growth, how are we, what is the metric that I'm measuring growth from? Year over year, and that's changed year over year. So how do you kind of gap that?
Yeah, so I can speak a little more to that. So growth is one of the more stable measures, so we will go over what we can compare from the previous report card to this year's report card that came out. And there are things with growth that we can actually say, like over time, our kids have increased growth. So, because like I said, that one is a little more stable. So that one we can look at to see, over time, and specifically that measure uses 3 years of data, and then each year is weighted differently. So this last year would be a heavier weight, and then the last third year would have dropped off, and then it just follows like those 3 years.
Got it. And my other just kind of comment or thought on this is when we take a look at, we've got the highest report card that we've ever had, which is fantastic for South, and I love seeing that. One of the questions I'm always going to have is, because you've mentioned since COVID, but what does that really look like pre-COVID? And just making sure that we can compare that. I think there's a lot that we know that there was pretty hefty learning loss. So we've rebounded in recovery, but where were we before? And again, the data is skewed because that's taking it to a different point we're on there. But I think those are important metrics, and they're probably very worth celebrating on where we've come. Mr. Zenobia.
Thank you. I guess I had a similar question. I was trying to understand the report card here, but when you look at the overall one, the meet expectations, we're looking at the percentages year over year seem to be just slightly less with less students, correct? But again, the growth, as Ms. Kozlowski had stated, is what seems to be much better. So I guess just understanding that disconnect, because it's somewhat similar in the academies as well, but overall the report card looks great. I guess from just trying to understand the report cards and the data that you're seeing, what does that really look like? So kind of the same question, but overall, I mean, it looks like the things that we have in place are working. It's just that these data points don't necessarily tell us that consistently. And I think that's the problem that I have looking at it, not understanding it.
Yeah, so I think. Let's try that again. So I think we always go back to like the data question and what information are we trying to give? So, or get. The report card gives that like system story or that school story, that high level amount of information. So part of the reason why we did that data protocol process and really dug in deeper was to really get at what instructionally can we do to affect and impact the data. So that was really helpful for us really to get into like instructionally, what can we do? What are the specific skills that we know our students are strong in? And what are some of those skills where we see opportunities for improvement? Just to kind of give an overview, and again, this is something I'm going to go over when we talk about the report card. When we look at how much weighting is placed on a school's like growth versus achievement. So the higher the economically disadvantaged population you have, there's going to be more weighting that's going to be placed on growth for a school. So like with South, a lot of their weighting is placed around the growth measure. So less students who are falling in that economically disadvantaged category, you're going to see more weight put on the achievement measure on a school report card. So that is something important to note because those weightings are going to be different based on that population. So a couple of things I wanted to just like go through here and mention. So when we look back at the performance levels, I'm going to go back here. And we look at the data, so these are years 23, 24, and then 24, 25. So we're looking at South right now. So we do know, so if we remember that the test did change, so back in 23, 24, so we actually have comparisons now that we can make those between the 2 years when the assessment did change. So in ELA, the advanced category grew. So that's an important thing to look at as we look at this data. For math, the category of meeting grew. So if we look at some of our other schools, so growth was meeting in math. So we grew in that area on this achievement level. And then for the engineering academy, we grew in the meeting category. And then we also grew in the advanced category. So it does give more of an apples to apples comparison now that we have the 2 years of data to look at. So we do have data that is showing that we are making some gains. And as Maria mentioned, we also know that there are some areas where we need to continue to keep improving and increase that achievement for some of our student groups as well.
Just wanted to add one thing. To date, we did look at the historical data of just DPI accountability report cards. This is, to date, the highest school report card South has earned.
Yeah, that's really great news.
I just looked too. You can go all the way back to 2011-12, and it's by far the highest. So it's excellent.
We're 1 point away from exceeding expectations, and
Well,
we-
is that the
That's the goal.
target? That's the target.
I mean,
lo-
I'd like to
it's-
get significantly exceeding, but we got to start somewhere.
I think it's fantastic, and I mean, to really be able to measure that and to have such a celebration for that, where you can actually use the data and say, I can measure it, I can put a stamp on it to say that what we are doing is working and we're seeing it. And I know there's so many different factors that layer into this, but how exciting to watch that and all the work that you guys do for each of the schools and all of the pieces, I think is pretty exciting. Mr. Zenobia?
I'm sorry. I did have one question. You mentioned something about the academies and some of the South students being able to take courses. I wasn't aware of that, but how many students generally, or percentage-wise, are taking advantage of that?
You know, I mean, I could pull like exact numbers. I'm just going to speak just based on information that I know. I reported this out at our Engineering Academy board meeting last week. We have, I would say, probably about 40 to 50 students that are partial enrollments of the Engineering Academy. And we have quite a few more that are partial enrollments at the Health Academy. I would say about 80-ish. So we have a lot of students that are accessing those classes as electives. And those are all those Project Lead the Way courses, which again, definitely has a level of rigor in them that supports not only the student in the classroom, but also beyond, right? If they are looking in the healthcare field or engineering field, they have access to curriculum that is going to put them a cut above their peers that are surrounding them, for sure.
So that, those would be students that are taking just one elective, correct? Because if they are taking,
They could take one, they could take all of them.
okay,
So if it fits in their schedule, they could take as many as they want. Some of them count as science elective credits, some of them will count as, like just elective credits. So they count for different things, and depending on the need that they need to fill and what they want to do post-secondary, they have those opportunities, which we are just so proud of. We talk a lot about our mission, and the other piece that we are very proud of is the number of opportunities students are afforded at South is truly incredible. And that's not just our academies, that's our dual language program, that is our incredible music program, our incredible art program. I don't know if you guys have ever seen we have a really robust art program and some pretty incredible artists in our building. So there's a lot of opportunities for students at South, and that's something we talk about, closing the opportunity gap and ensuring that kids have access so they can be successful post-secondary.
thank you.
Anything else? Well, this was excellent. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's all the support of all of you. We couldn't do this without you, so thank you.
Well, like I said, the topics feed right into each other. So now Jamie's going to share a little bit more about the overall district report card results. These are all available on DPI's public page as well as our website. When they were released, we shared the information on our website as well as school websites, and also did a press release too. So while it seems like this information has been out there for a little while, this is just our first opportunity that it's been public, and so we just want to share a little bit more about it and then summarize how our schools and our districts did for you.
All right, so before we jump into the numbers and the data, I'm just going to set us with kind of some reminders about the purpose of the report card. So I did mention this just earlier, is one of the purposes is really looking at what is the system's story. So the report card typically should share, like, what is it that speaks of our district? What are some of those insights that we know of? What are we seeing as possible areas of continuous improvement, and things that we can celebrate as well? So the report card is also mandated by state law. So we are required to share details of the report card and our data from what we've been seeing over time. So let's go through a few of the changes. So there are a few to the new report card. At some point, I'm going to come before you guys and say no changes, but not tonight. So one of the things that we have to keep in mind is, although the overall scores are not comparable to prior years, so this is considered to be the new baseline. So that would be the 74.7 as well as the stars. So when we look at our new baseline, it is a great new baseline to be at. So we currently in our district exceed expectations. So like I said, a great place to have our baseline set at. So just to kind of give a frame of reference, if we think about, and I believe Dr. Siebert mentioned this as well at a previous meeting, that when we look at the top 10 biggest districts, we are one of the first ones. So we are the first one with our overall score of 74.7. And so that is also consistent from last year's data as well too. So although we can't necessarily compare the score, and I have been in front of you guys sharing multiple data points, which have also indicated we are trending upward. So like I said, it's a great place to be, and all of our data is really showing improvement. So I've included here also the changes in the accountability reporting categories. So you can see 23-24 there in the lower left. A score of 58 met expectations, and a score of 60 now meets expectations for 24-25. The other couple changes is 2 years are included in the report card for achievement data. So if you recall in past years, it's always 3 years worth of data. So 3 years will resume, we're told, with the next year's report card. If test participation is below a 95% threshold, that is now reported on the front page of the report card. There's also 2 other reporting categories that have been added. One of them is 3rd grade reading proficiency, which we'll go over. And then there's also a state or local law violations, which is towards the end of the report card. Norming updates have also been done, as you may already be aware of, as DPI realigned the report cards for this year. So listed on this slide are our elementary, middle, and high schools scores. We're not going to spend too much time going over these scores. These are just here for reference. But overall, many of our schools, again, their baseline is starting at a great place to be. So one of the things that we can compare is looking at our demographic and our priorities, so our district snapshot. So if we look at our total enrollment, and as we know, this is something that we've been talking about, we have dropped in enrollment. So our current enrollment status sits at about 10,167, which is what's on the report card at the time of the data pull. So one of the things I did mention was based on our economically disadvantaged population, that determines how much weighting is put on either that achievement and that growth composite area. So I did include the numbers so we can kind of see from 23-24, we were at 37.2%, and now this year at a 38.6%, so a slight increase. So therefore, that looks at our weightings. Achievement is weighted 22.6% this year and 27.4% for growth. So more of our weighting on our report card is going to be based on that growth measure. There are 2 other areas that we look at on the report card, which is our target group outcomes at 25% is the weighting, and then on track to graduation, which is also at 25%. And I'll go over each one of these area weights. We're going to dive first into the achievement overview. So again, on the left, you can see the graphics of our overall score, which again represents our new baseline, and then how we compare to the state. So one of the things when looking at this measure, our context is really how are we doing relative to the state? Because of some of the constrictions we have regarding comparison. So when we look at our ELA, from this year's report card, we have a score of 68.7, and the state is at a 63.9. So again, we are above that of the state. In the area of math, our score is a 71.4, while the state score is a 65.6. So again, above that of the state. So another way to look at this is our district scored similar to or better than 60% of other districts in the state in 24-25. So this is a vast improvement when we look at our percentile from last year, which was a 46.6%. Here's another way to look at our achievement, which is by looking at our performance levels. So I will just have to say this is exactly the profile we would want to see. So the blue and the purple represent our advanced and our meeting categories, which are the categories we want to grow. So you can see the arrows from 23 to 24 to 24, 25 in both our advanced and our meeting levels indicate a positive growth. And we're decreasing in the yellow and the orange, which indicate those are our approaching and developing areas, which again, we want to decrease those as we increase our advanced and meeting. So the specific numbers are there. So in ELA, our advanced population, or category rather, is 15.4%. So that is an increase from last year, which was 14.4%. Our meeting grew to a 40.6%, while our approaching and developing decreased, like I mentioned, to 28 and a 16%, respectively. In math, our advanced levels also grew. So we, this year, saw 22.7%. So that's an improvement from 20.3% in 23-24. And then our meeting category was 35%. Again, improved from 34.6% in 23-24. And our, like I mentioned, our approaching and developing decreased, which again is what we want to see because that means we're growing our meeting and our advanced. So now we're going to take a look at our growth performance. So you can see the overall score as our baseline is a 74.6. And on this measure, we saw both internal growth as well as growth comparative to the state. So when we look at ELA, our score was a 75.5, which is an improvement from last year, which was a 71.7. Our math growth also grew from at a 73.6 from a 67.9 in 23-24. So the state's growth is at a 66.0. So when we look at our ELA growth, we grew 3.8 points internally, and then 9 points above the state is where we fall relative in that ELA category. Math, we grew 5.7 points internally, and we're about 5.7 points above the state. So again, another way to look at this one is this performance indicates we scored similar to or better than 87.1% of districts in the state for 24-25 when it comes to growth. And this is also an improvement from 23-24 where we were at a 77.1 percentile.
Can you just pause for a second? I just want to, I think we just kind of need to take the time. This is a really great analysis. And just celebrate what we're seeing and hearing. So achievement and growth are the areas that we want to talk about because that's where we're learning, we're growing. And I mean, it goes without saying that the investment in the curriculum and our staff absorbing and taking all of this on it and working with it, it's paying very big dividends for the benefit of our kids. And I think this is remarkable to see. And from that standpoint, we're just taking off. I mean, this is going to continue to rise as we go and we get more situated with all we've done. And I think we need to, at some points, pause and just say, this is excellent to see.
Absolutely.
And think about the strategic planning and continuous improvement efforts just paired right with it. And so like at what was modeled with Jamie and Maria, digging down into what is an area we need to focus on and then focusing on that with strategic actions beyond just the tier one curriculum implementation and teaching, but also being very strategic in our continuous improvement efforts. You know, together those things hand in hand are just going to propel us, forward.
I think it's really cool. Great to see. I'm excited for how it's all coming together.
Absolutely, yep. So I mentioned a little bit about the growth value added measure. This is what is additional to the area of growth. So I mentioned previously, so a score of 3.0 represents average or typical growth. And then the further right you are to the vertical line, which the vertical line represents 3.0, you can say the school's impact of instructional practices and leadership practices are really contributing to that growth. So when we look at, this is broken down on the left side into ELA and then the right side math. Again, another celebration when we look at our growth, like we are growing all groups of our students. So in ELA, all groups showed above average growth. So above average growth. In math, all of our groups showed average to above average growth. So again, another huge celebration when we look at growth in our system. So two other areas left to look at on our school report card, and one of them is called the target group outcomes. So this measure really looks at how our students in the bottom quartile, or 25%, closing the gap and are being served when you compare them to the other 75%. Okay, so there are 4 different areas that we look at on this measure. So we look at achievement, we look at growth, we look at chronic absenteeism, and we look at graduation. So one of the ways to look at this measure is we want to see the green bar exceeding that of the light blue or the gray bar. So what that essentially tells us is we're closing the gap between our students who are in that bottom quartile and those other 75%. Okay, so you can kind of see as we look towards our growth measure, we see those bars a little bit closer together. We know, again, we're a system that looks like continuous improvement. We know when we look at achievement, there are some areas there that we can focus on and set some goals as far as making sure that we're closing those gaps between our bottom quartile of students. All right, on track to graduation is the final area. So when we look at on track to graduation, there are 4 different areas on this measure. So chronic absenteeism, graduation, 3rd grade English language arts, and then 8th grade mathematics. So again, what we want to see is our performance compared to the state, and you can kind of see already like where we rank relative to the state. So especially when we look at our numbers in chronic absenteeism, so this would indicate students who are missing school at about 10%. So we are doing better than that of the state at an 81.9 compared to an 80.2 relative to the state. Our graduation numbers are higher, so 94.6% compared to 91.9. And then 3rd grade reading proficiency is a 73.7, which surpasses the state, as well as when we look at 8th grade mathematics, that measure also surpasses that of the states. So as I mentioned earlier, there's another category that has been now added to the report card, and this is 3rd grade reading proficiency. So this looks at how the percentage of students who are meeting or advanced on the forward and are proficient on the DLM assessment. So in the school district of Waukesha, we currently have 58.9% compared to the state at 50.3%. And although we are above the state, this continues to be a goal for us as far as like increasing our percentage of students who are proficient in 3rd grade reading.
Just to clarify that, though, so Act 20 has been fully implemented. This is the first year that we've been under the guidelines and the implementation of the rules for Act 20. So kind of keeping that in mind as the importance of that phonetical need.
Yep.
And where we're seeing it, I think, is going to just continue to expand.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, the last pages of the district report card they provide some information regarding our post-secondary preparation. So I just provide a couple screenshots here on some of the measures of our district. So the first one is participation by type. And one of the things to note right off the bat is as you look at our advanced courses, we have 47.1% compared to 20% of the state. So that is definitely something that we see a lot more students engaging in with those advanced placement courses. The other measure we have here is participation by type of arts courses. So you can see the numbers relative, again, to the state and where we compare as far as students who are participating in those areas. All right, so now I'm going to take a brief minute here just to kind of synthesize all the information that we went over tonight. And really, again, bring it back to what is our district's data story when we look at all this information. So when we look at our achievement, again, we see some strong performance reflecting those instructional strategies. We've looked at our data across time, and we've also seen like our data supporting that increase in achievement. Our growth is strong and in many situations above average, which really speaks to our leadership and, again, our instructional practices that are being implemented within the district. Our on-track to graduation indicators are really all showing and trending above the state. And our opportunities, we really continue to keep working towards improving our student outcomes. I've shared already some of those goals that we continue to focus on, and really using that data to increase and improve those outcomes for all of our students. All right, and I'm going to open it up to discussion.
Mr. Zenobia.
Thank you. So, back to the first slide, if you can. I was just curious about the economically disadvantaged. I know you said that we used the growth, that's weighted heavier due to that fact. At what percentage is that kind of triggered? Is that something we know, or? Like, how much of the population needs to be economically disadvantaged in order to go to that growth?
That is a good question. I don't know the exact specifics, but what you can do is there is a calculator that's out there. So it's on like DPI's website where you can actually play with the numbers, and it will actually show you like if you had this percentage of your population, how much weighting would be placed on achievement and growth. So we can find information on that.
Okay. And I don't know the exact numbers, but it seems to me that as long as I've been here and tracking that number's been relatively close, within a couple percent. I mean, does that sound about right? I mean, even though it's a little greater in this past year, and even we're seeing those gains that we have overall, I don't know if you've noticed that, or you could speak to that, Jen.
I can jump in. I think is relatively similar throughout the last couple of years. But again, I do want to point out that that is just based on what families do tell us. And so it is part of the enrollment process. And so we always do encourage people, to share more. But that is just really only based on what families do share with us. Mm-hmm. So I think some of our schools would say they feel it's much higher.
I would just say too, Mr. Zenobia, our free and reduced numbers have consistently just ticked upwards, even despite our declining enrollment, similar to our special education percentages. Yeah. So to Ms. Gunnerman's point, I mean, it is probably going to just continue to lean a little further toward growth, minuscule points over time.
Sure. Yeah, thinking of the special education numbers that continue to tick up a little bit too. So, we have, more needs within the student population that we're teaching, and yet we're excelling. So I think that's an excellent presentation, but I think that's something I'm pointing out here, that we're meeting those expectations and gaining, if you will. So,
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Brooks.
Thanks. Yeah, this was a fantastic presentation and definitely a lot to celebrate. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head early on, where when you look at the top 10 largest districts in the state, we are number one. And I think that's important to keep in mind when we talk about our performance. It's important to look at us versus the entire state as a whole, where we're seeing a lot of positive things too. But when we're comparing school districts, it's you have to have an apples to apples comparison, and I think we're showing, because of the investments that we've made in guaranteed and viable curriculum, especially with our reading scores, we're seeing this because we got a head start on the Act 20 Science of Reading. But we're showing what education in a large size school district in the state can and should look like. I think a lot of that is on our staff, who are doing a great job with all the new curriculum and implementing it seamlessly. But I truly believe that Waukesha can be a model for some of the larger districts in our state to see what can be possible if you make those decisions and invest in the strong curriculum and strong people that we have here.
Great. Mrs. Koenig?
Thank you. It is exciting to see the work we've done these last 3-4 years and how it's finally, coming to fruition. I'm just really excited, and I agree with Ms. Kozlowski. It's going to go, I think we're going to continue to see the improvement, and it's exciting to finally see it happening. Thank you. Great presentation.
Yeah, truly, this was excellent. And I know how hard this is because the data keeps changing. So I hope that we get another year where you can come back next year and say, it did not change.
That is my hope.
Well, thank you. Welcome. That does conclude our topics for discussion this evening. I do, Stacy, want to just highlight that I missed it early on that Dr. Piasek was excused because she's business traveling. So we are at the point for recommendations for future meetings. Okay. Seeing none, that concludes our meeting. Our next teaching and learning meeting is already in the new year, January 6th of 2026. So we will see you next year.